Morning.
Hi, everybody.
Hey there.
Going to give folks a couple minutes to finish logging on here.
Hi, Sean.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All sparkles and sunshine here.
Oh,
Glitter, glitter, glitter.
yeah. Feels like snow again here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, did you guys get snow, Melanie? Because yeah, I woke up with snow here, and because we live above Reno a little bit, and it is cold, but now it's sunshiny. But we did get a blanket of snow here.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. It's not summertime yet.
Alrighty, getting a few more participants logging on. So we'll go ahead and jump in. This is a continuation of yesterday. It's day 2 of our introductory workshop. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to start the day with a brief recap of what we talked about yesterday. I don't know about you guys, but I know I spent the evening just immersed in replaying in my head all of the discussion and questions and the number of folks that we had and the level of interest and the camaraderie of it all. And it just, gosh, I'm so grateful for this opportunity, you guys, and for everybody tuning in to support the community, the family of THPOs, and to join it. So some of the things that I realized we wanted to be sure and cover and clarify include the requirements for having a THPO. We had some questions about recognition status and land status yesterday. And I'm going to turn it over to John. He's put some key points in a couple of slides. And I want to emphasize that some of these are also just ideas, and we continue to encourage everyone to contribute your message. Keep the questions coming in the chat box. Raise your hand, let us know at any point if you need clarification of something, or if you're a current THPO, if you have something that you would like to contribute. That was a big part of what made yesterday so powerful and effective, I think, and we encourage you to do the same today. And then if you got the agenda from me, that you'll see that we'll spend the bulk of our time today going through an example of a successful application. That's the one that Eric wrote for the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon to establish that THPO program. And we also hope that that can be somewhat interactive. So with that, I'll turn it over to John. Do you want me to share the slides? I already am, so I can just—
Yes, please. Why not?
Alrighty.
Just keep that party going on that end. Yes, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. an honor to be with you again today and to see so many people returning, especially an indication of like this very first point listed here, that there's lots of interest on the part of the people that matter in the THPO program and in expanding and enhancing that program. Beyond that, I wanted to make clear something that Valerie just said, that these are just a few high points, the things that reverberated for me from yesterday. And so really encourage you, please, to if there was something that came across and really was a learning moment for you, or that was something that you just didn't know about and were surprised to find out, then please put it in the chat box or shout it out here, because we've got let's treat this as a workshop, some way to kind of, I guess the reason I'm saying this is because it was such a rich learning day for me, in a lot of ways, bringing me up to date on the level of analysis that has taken place to figure out how to position THPOs and to, I'll say, optimize the efficiency of the application process, and a bunch of best practices or recommended practices for getting through it all. So we should make a record of these, that's where we're starting today, so we can build on yesterday, of course, especially
So John,
guessing
I
there's
also
at least a
want to
few
add,
folks
sorry,
that weren't here yesterday. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
when you're done with your comments, I'm actually going to tack on something that's not on the agenda. Melissa, our consultant, was gracious enough before the end of her workday yesterday to compile the questions and their associated answers from the chat box and sent those to me in a Word document, which I passed along to the group of trainers to make sure that we answered any questions that may have been outstanding. And I included Jamie Lee Marks in that email correspondence, and she actually got some answers back to us in writing in a Word document, since she's not able to be here today. So at the end of this segment, I will provide some of those clarifying answers from Jamie Lee, from her perspective as the Park Service THPO program manager for a number of years.
Well, when you get to my age, we have around my house a blurt it or lose it rule is in effect. And so my blurt it or lose it moment here is that this may provide a great foundation for expanding, an FAQ on the NATHPO website of issues that come up in this critical part of getting applications together. So just backing away from the application briefly, I feel like the program, and in a lot of ways, the Federal Preservation Program, the NATHPO, the Federal Preservation Program, and THPOs are all sort of at this historic moment of a new level of dedication to remediating inequities in the institutions that we're associated with, most especially this Federal Preservation Program and the federal government more generally, or maybe just government. And that we have also the beginnings of a major cadre of folks that really understand at multiple levels, from tribes to national tribal organizations, what the story is with THPOs, why they need support, and the differences that additional support could make. At this time, also, there is this big raft of money on the way into Indian country, more money than ever before, in the form of, $32 billion from the American Rescue Plan Act, then the other ARPA, or the new ARPA. And so, I invited everybody to be ready and on the lookout and thinking about building shovel-ready plans for that. There is more capacity than there's ever been also in THPO knowledge, and that's been proved up by the incredible depth of experience and quality of the advice available from Sean and from Everett and Eric and many of you all who contributed yesterday. And so that means that help isn't just available or out there somewhere. It's here right now. and available. So to me, that's also important that NAFPO is rolling up its sleeves and is dedicated to making information based on that critical mass of knowledgeable THPOs and tribal officials available to everybody. So yeah, next slide for sure. So this is what I took away from the kind of challenges or issues that got discussed yesterday by way of establishing THPO. It is a critically important exercise of sovereignty. It doesn't mean that it necessarily fits in with every tribe or native communities' efforts to expand and enhance their sovereignty, but it is a really important way of asserting it and demonstrating it. It requires planning. And we learned yesterday that the planning that goes into setting up a THPO is not the same thing as the historic preservation plan that's referenced in the application materials. Planning is critical to understand the place of the THPO within the community and within the tribal government, to clarify the duties, clarify the funding, what exactly it is the THPO is able to do with its budget allocation, what it's being funded through the Park Service grants to provide, and what it's not. And to clarify, of course, that where there's more being required of a THPO than is being funded by the federal government, then the difference has to be made up somewhere, either through the direct budgeting process through the tribal government, or from some other source, or through, I'll call them entrepreneurial activities, ways of building partnerships and asserting the needs for funds and the deserved needs for funds by THPOs from agencies that they are providing services to. So the third point is that a THPO is not the solution to the full range of a community's interests in culture and history. I've never heard of a THPO say, yep, this is what we do, we only do this, and the community doesn't need anything else. All the funds come through from the Park Service for us to do everything we need to do. So the THPOs are toeholds. They're ways of starting. They're nexuses or loci of capacity to build bigger programs where that is desired by the community and the tribe. But it's not required, but it's almost always desired. And so we have to keep our lookout on to where to grow, and how to do that on a sustainable basis, with more secure funding in order to provide support for THPOs to serve a greater range of tribal needs. Now, THPOs per se, THPOs have been established and there exist today THPOs, as far as I know still, that have not been through the application process. A tribe has sovereignty and it can declare the existence of a THPO, but it cannot declare that the federal government will provide funding through the grants process for that THPO. So it is an important distinction here, and nothing prevents a tribe from doing everything within the boundaries of its sovereignty, which, as we all know, is super extensive, by way of taking care of the historic places, the cultural places, the other elements of culture that it wants to on its land. But THPOs provide both, the federal approval process provides both greater recognition, potentials for partnership, and the small amount of funding that comes along with that. So we also learned that establishing a THPO through the National Park Service process requires federal recognition and some tribal trust land. There's no minimum amount, and obviously there's no maximum amount of tribal trust land, but it is for federally recognized tribes that have trust land. Hopefully that takes care of most of the core. The rest of it is just a bunch of question marks for us to fill in, as I recall, Valerie. And maybe I've used all the time we had for the recap anyway, so sorry for that.
No, that's okay. That was perfect. Thank you. Made the key points that I was thinking at the end of the day, we want to be sure and reiterate. And that saves me a few minutes to share some answers that Jamie Lee would have chimed in to the questions coming in the chat box yesterday if she had been here. She is with FEMA now. She left the Park Service to take a position with FEMA, and I don't know what her normal duties will be, but these days I know that she's staffing mass vaccination sites. So wishes that she could be here, and hopefully in the coming months we'll be able to participate with us in these workshops. In the meantime, one of the questions yesterday was, what is the best way to fund THPO functions and staff when a tribe does not have sufficient financial resources? And Jamie Lee wanted to point out that the Administration for Native Americans, ANA, they have grants that can be used for purposes like this. And I'm going to put that in the chat box. And related to that, someone asked, does anyone know of a good source for having ground penetration LiDAR to determine if there are buried items, structures, etc.? Is this a cost that can come from a THPO source? Yes, it can. Bill Quackenbush is a good contact about this, and he is a THPO in Wisconsin. So I also want to make you aware of our directory. Nope, that's the same thing. On the NAFTA website, we maintain a directory of all THPOs, and that mirrors the official Park Service directory. So you can also go there as well. Both of those sources will be the same for contact information. Does anyone have examples of program income that can be generated from this office? Jamie Lee wants you to know that you should never call this program income in anything submitted to the Park Service or to ACHP if you can help it. Remember that the HPF money only covers the activities it covers. It cannot cover the full scope of THPO operations. So if someone asks if a federal grant is covering an income generating activity, budget the THPO grant money to cover something else. Thanks, Melissa. And she's put in a link to some grant information as well.
It's my understanding that with most grants, unless they're like 638 compacted grants, it gets squirrely with making income off of it. But for tribes, there's a lot of exceptions that can be made that they can use grant funding under their 638 contracting to make additional money, and including doing fundraising and other things. But make sure to check the nature of your contracts so that you're not creating conflicts.
Mm-hmm. Someone asked, do all THPOs take on all the SHPO tasks, or are there some that are more commonly taken on and others less likely to be adopted to THPOs? And I think we did end up covering that yesterday, but she wanted to clarify. And I think we did end up covering that. Most take on all, but about, I think 8 or 10 it was, those ones that Eric mentioned are not typically taken on. The rest are all taken on by partners with very few exceptions. Number 4 must be taken on to be grant eligible. And that was State Program of Federal Assistance for Historic Preservation. What was that implemented? Regardless, I feel like we did get those questions answered yesterday. What happens when a tribe takes more land into trust after establishing a THPO? Submit documentation to NPS. If it's held up in litigation, NPS is supposed to wait until that's resolved. Another question about that. Helen had said we don't have a reservation. We are one of 2 tribes that didn't get allocated in-scale land. Trust land would be the need in this case. Another clarifier on that point. And she also wants to make sure that I direct people to the video that she made that's part of the self-guided training materials that she developed before they did the training last March. And so if you go to the TIPO application page on the Park Service site, which is here. That is there as well. She's got a couple of videos that are hosted on YouTube that she has made of herself giving a presentation. So similar materials to this, but a different take and from the official Park Service perspective. So one is a 10-minute video, and then this one is a 30-minute section by section video walking you through the application, which is what we're going to do next. And those are all of the answers from Jamie Lee that I wanted to convey with you. Thanks, Melissa, for making that point in the chat box too. We are redoing our entire website. We redid it last year and the process kind of stopped midstream. So what you see now is sort of half finished, and we're working with a company out of Minnesota to redesign our entire website, and it will also be integrated with a member management platform that we are getting as well to automate dues, invoices, and payment, and provide a forum for members to interface with each other. And it will
Val?
also integrate with the website, and our directory will be a little more user-friendly than it currently is. And the old version of the website, the map used to be clickable, and it's not even clickable anymore. So in the next couple of months, we'll have some exciting stuff rolling out. So stay with us.
Val, there's a question that came in from Mr. Whedon about 638 funds. I'm not a financial expert with the BIA, but I do work at the BIA. It is my understanding that when compacting is done and 638 contracts are signed, that includes all NEPA and NHPA compliance. And usually the BIA does not do the compliance for those. If that service is compacted with the tribe, it's assumed that that funding in the 638 contract will help supplement that. So there is some of the funding that's coming through. So a good way to look at this is if your tribe has timber operations, if you are doing agricultural leasing or pastoral leasing, there may be income coming in to the tribe under those things. And that stuff, if those compact or signed compacts with 638, those programs should be funding to do the NHPA compliance. And so if they're not sending money over to do that, that might be an internal question about priorities, because the BIA typically, if they send you 638 funding, they're assuming you're taking on the NEPA, because we CADX it out as a NEPA action and as an NHPA clearance and say it's an administrative action and that you guys bear all the responsibilities. And so at that point, it's not a federal thing anymore, but it's the assumption is that the money's being used that way. I hope that answers the question. I know it's kind of a roundabout.
Hey, Valerie, if I could, good morning, everybody. I want to plug a 1-minute commercial about NAFPO, since this is kind of the time to do it, since Valerie was just talking a little bit about NAFPO. The Park Service, the National Park Service, through the funding to the TIPO tribes, they do allow the tribes to pay their dues to NAFPO. And it's 1%, I believe. Now, I'm crazy in math. So people usually, sometimes tribes will think it's 10% of your, of what your tribe is allocated. So this year, remember yesterday I was telling you, this year we received 72,244, something like that. So the 1%, I believe, is 724 would be my yearly due, would be the Reno Sparks Indian Colonies TIPO's yearly due. And we pay that due, and most of the tribes pay that due if they can, and the National Park Service allows your Park Service funding to pay those dues to NAFPO. And what your dues go for are, of course, there's a NAFPO board, an executive board of directors. And then, but what your dues pay for is the messaging that is just happening these last 2 days. Valerie has really kicked it up a notch. Valerie, Julie, and Melissa have really kicked up NAFPO a lot this year, only probably because during the pandemic, but also they're really great. They're just great workers. And so you're paying for also Valerie keeping an eye on the lobbying that's going on at Washington, D.C. at the Capitol in historic preservation funding. So totally like a lobbyist. She also tries her best to send, their best to send out information that comes over through the emails to everybody in regards to cultural preservation. I know 2 years ago, Valerie, we were commenting on, there was some amendments to the National Historic Preservation Act in regards to the landowners, private landowners. I believe that's what it was not having to really have a say when when cultural items were being determined eligible or not eligible. And so Valerie pushed, you know, a letter writing campaign out to folks. So that's how we get a lot of information as well. So your dues, the dues that we do pay, they come in handy. They're very helpful. And it's your dues that you can be a participating member at the yearly conferences, and you still have to pay registration and of course to get your travel to that. This year it was on online platform, and the board at that time decided, you know, let's just not pay registration fees because, you know, during the pandemic it was a hard time. So I just wanted to plug that in, that is what NATHPO is, a National Association of THPOs, is really that national level of helping THPOs to address cultural resources management in every way possible. There's a lot more. Just cruise around in the NATHPO website. You'll see a lot. And now you guys are really, that never knew about NATHPO, you're really seeing what NATHPO is about and what they're doing. And I'm seeing that Valerie, Melissa, and Julie, they're just kicking it up a notch and helping to really train. And this is really the first time, I believe, in the last several years that we're even helping to establish other THPOs. So kudos to you girls, thank you. But really kudos to the tribes that are really taking a step to go further in managing our past and our cultural resources today. Thanks.
Thanks, Michonne. We always appreciate that. Okay, I'm actually going to turn it over to Eric and back to Michonne at this point for our section on the agenda is where do I begin with this application? And then in 30 minutes we have scheduled how do I complete each section, which will be a walkthrough. I'm not sure what we intended the difference to be between those, those two things now looking at them. We might have covered what we need to yesterday. Where do I begin with this application? I think wanted to
the
be
hope
sure.
was to get a little bit deeper and talk about like where communities need to spend a little bit more nuanced time. Like, how is your program actually structured? Are you in your natural resources department? Are you in the planning department? Are you in the education department? Are you language? Are you your own thing? You know, and so each of those steps, when there's descriptions of what it is, I think the hope was to get a little bit more detailed into that for those that have questions. For those that feel like they've already got everything they need, I mean, obviously it's easy and run and jump and play. So
I also kind of see that we should, and I don't know, we might want to hear this from the participants in the chat box, is that's really good, Eric. We do need to do all of that. And I think we kind of did it yesterday, walking through. I would like to see maybe, and it's too much, if we could walk through every question in the application with folks, you know, just going from, you know, the very first one, because we kind of did it yesterday, Roman numeral #1. We know that it's two things that have to be done. And then I see that Gary Cantley might be on in the Zoom this morning, and we could talk about, you know, the tribal lands and why I brought up BIA, because they will have to, I think what it is the National Park Service will ask BIA to confirm the lands, especially the tribal lands description. I don't know, I thought that might be a good start, because the first thing is everybody, the very beginning, we do need to go to the application. I think that's really important. And then I know, Valerie, that you guys are thinking about or really trying to push to have another workshop in creating and filling out their application. So there's a couple things. I think that it's very important, and I'm not sure the answer to this is when our applications due. I think you can submit them continuous, as at any time. I'm not sure what the process is after that. That's a good question for Jamie Lee. So I don't know if there's really like a deadline, or is there? I was never really clear on that. And then, and also I just wanted to say that I'm going to be, I have to jump off the call probably for a good hour, and I'll try to come back on. So if you guys see me gone, and I'll be back. Anyway, that was my 2 cents.
So to clarify your point about the timing of it, there is actually, I think that is part of what the 10-minute video is that Jamie Lee has on the website, on the Park Service website, the link that I posted earlier. Do that again.
Okay.
Applications can be submitted at any time throughout the year, but that July 31st deadline is when the final agreement needs to be in place between the tribe and DOI in order to be eligible for the funding cycle. So for the THPO grants that are open right now with a deadline of the end of the month or the beginning of May, I should know that.
Okay.
A tribe would have needed to have gotten that agreement in place by last July 31st. So if you make the cutoff this year, then for the next year cycle of funding, which is usually when, the federal fiscal year starts October 1st. And so for everything to trickle down, as I was saying yesterday, to make it to the point of the Park Service having those grants open is usually the spring. And that process of the application for ACHP to review, to do their review of the application and the relevant SHPO, and then Park Service and everybody, it can take several months. So I understand that there are folks out there right now who are in the process of completing the application. So I anticipate that there will be a few more. This year, is it realistic for the May and the June workshop that we are hoping to be able to schedule soon, that those folks who begin an application then will be able to meet the July 31st deadline? It's a little ambitious. Never say never. So that's kind of my answer on that. You can submit an application at any time, but that's what that July 31st means.
Okay, my relatives, let's do it. I think everybody that's across Indian country on the Zoom right now, I know it's a lot to ask for, but it would be a good idea. Let's do it. Let's work on it. Even when we're done today, you can reach out to us, and when we can find some time to help out. I think that it would be a good one. I mean, let's do it. Let's not stop the passion and the momentum of doing it, because I think we're starting it. Let's roll. Picture us rolling. Okay, shall we start with the questions? Is that good, Eric? I'm bossy. I don't want to take over.
I am flexible, so I guess the only way I like to start is the same way my grandpa always started everything, kind of with like analogies and stories, because it always seemed to work better for me because I didn't really think the way I think a lot of people did in class. And so for my community, when we came to apply for the THPO, I came to work for my community looking for a summertime job as a cultural resource monitor. And they snagged me up and asked me to write the THPO plan and everything else. And when I started that process, the tribe had actually previously attempted to develop a THPO. There had been a tribal member that had spearheaded that effort and had been unsuccessful because of the politics of it. And I was not aware of that until I was asked to start the process, and I had to kind of negotiate and go over all this previously trodden ground. And when your community is considering this, I think the biggest things you need to think about is accessing the people that that are not only just the decision makers, but also the folks that have the cultural wherewithal and the ability to influence the community. Because the way you pose how a THPO can benefit or not benefit your community can adversely affect whether or not your community is going to continue to be interested. So I think, make sure you're educated, educate your membership, educate your elders and your leadership, and then let them help you figure out kind of next steps and how the THPO does or doesn't work for the community. Because, as John pointed out earlier and others yesterday, THPOs can be absolutely the most fantastic tool in your workshop. It can also be an absolute waste of space at times. So it's, making sure that you know what you want out of it and that your community knows what they're getting. I think that would be the main thing I would say is your first step. Have those internal dialogues, figure out what it is you need and what you want, and make sure that what the THPO program is offering and what that deal with the NPS is going to give is going to meet the needs of the community. And if not, then, figure out how to address those at the same time if you can, and make those issues interrelated, because a lot of times they are interrelated. It just takes a little bit of time to look at them.
So Valerie, could I suggest, can you pull up the application questions, or does somebody have that? Or does Eric have that?
I have actually,